Hey everyone, it's Anne. I am just back from E3. I'm happy to be home. I had a really great week, and I have actually a vlog coming out about E3, so you guys can watch that. This video specifically, I want to talk about the game that everyone's excited for, Cyberpunk 2077. Now, most of you probably already saw the amazing announcement video at the Microsoft conference that was right before E3. Lady Gaga? Nope. Oh! What? Holy fuck, I could not be more excited right now! But at E3, I actually got to go to a very special appointment-only, behind closed doors, 1-hour demo of Cyberpunk 2077 gameplay. So they actually had a dev sitting in a nearby room. I don't know if he was actually in the back of the room maybe with us, but he was actually playing the game, and it was just a full hour of gameplay. So I have a lot of notes that I took while I was in the demo. You know, you're sitting there and kind of just watching the big screen, and I tried to take a lot of very thorough notes. I put together a spreadsheet, and I'll put that link in the description for you guys so you can look over that yourselves. And then there's different categories that I'm going to go over. We were doing like a story mission in the demo, and I'm going to try to avoid talking about specific story things that happened in the demo, but I'm going to talk about the different RPG elements that we saw, things like the stat screens and the character customization and just kind of general thoughts, which some of it might already be public information, but I figured that I would just go ahead and make a YouTube video really quick and just go over everything that I saw. Now, some of what they showed us actually seemed like it was kind of a story spoiler, and I was fine seeing it, but I'm not sure if everyone wants as much detail as they showed us, and they might actually release this gameplay to you guys later. I'm just going to put all of the things that I considered to be story spoilers at the very end of the video, and at the same thing with the spreadsheet, I'm just going to put everything at the very end, and I'm going to put a break saying, you know, everything past this might be considered a story spoiler, so just if you want to watch up until that point and then stop, this is my disclaimer and my forewarning to you that that might be a story spoiler. But they did show us that content in the demo, and if they release this 1 hour of footage, which last year they did the same thing, they had like a Cyberpunk demo, and then they released that footage about 2 months later, and that's still on their YouTube channel. So if you guys are at all concerned about that, I'm just gonna caution you that that might be in that footage that they show later. So like I said, there's a few different categories of things that we're going to talk about, and I'm going to put the timestamps for everything in the description. The first thing that I'm going to talk about is the character customization. They showed some of the options that you could choose. Obviously, there's the male and female characters, which they showed the female character already. In this demo, we actually saw both of them and as different kinds of characters. The female V was more of a like guns and fighting character, and the male one was more of a high intelligence hacking type of character. They showed some options around your hair color, your eye color. You could change the actual like wiring on your face, and they said that there should be more on launch, but they didn't really say what was more. There was maybe like 6 to 8 different color tiles that you could click on for skin tone and hair and eye color, but I'm not sure if they're going to have like a color picker later or if they're just going to have like a lot more colors. They didn't really say. The other thing is that they showed there are 3 different types of backgrounds that you can give your character. So the first is Nomad, the second is Street Kid, and the third is a Corporate. These different backgrounds, they didn't go into too much detail, but one thing that they did show us was that the different background classes actually have different dialogue options. So there would be, when you went to talk to someone and it has like the lines of text at the bottom where you can choose what you want to respond with, it actually had a thing that said like, in parentheses, Street Kid. And that response was directly a result of choosing that background for your character. Your character also has different base stats, things like intelligence, strength, reflexes, and it looked like that when you're actually creating the character that it had a maximum of +6 points per each category, but later on we did see that one of the characters had +9 in a few things, and so I'm assuming obviously in any RPG, you know, you're leveling up your character. So some of this stuff I don't know if it's really relevant, but I'm just telling you guys everything that I saw, trying to be as thorough as possible. I also saw that the clothing items had stats, so they had different things like resistance, and depending on what clothing you picked, your character had those different stats. They said, quote, "Style is very important in our game." They wanted the characters to look cool. And even though it's in first person, you can switch to third person in driving. He at one point stood like in front of a mirror so you could see your character in the mirror and that sort of thing. So you want to make sure that they look cool. The next thing that we're going to talk about is world building. So they told us that there are 6 major districts. Now, whether or not there are several smaller districts, I'm not sure, but they definitely said 6 major districts. The one that was the focus of our demo was a place called Pacifica. And Pacifica basically started out as this place that was supposed to be designed for the rich and famous to come and spend a lot of money, and it was supposed to be a very wealthy place. They said that there is some crisis that happens in the game, and basically all of the investors pulled their money out, the construction projects were all abandoned, and it's kind of just this like derelict place with tons of skyscrapers, but they're basically abandoned. And they said that there's many different gangs in Night City, which is the name of the whole map, obviously. So the gang that actually controls Pacifica is called the Voodoo Boys, and that was the main focus of the demo that they showed us. Now the Voodoo Boys, we're going to talk about a little bit more later. I'm going to go over the different gangs that we saw. We saw 2 gangs in this demo, but I'm just going to save that for a little bit later. The next thing that they mentioned was that meat is actually illegal in Night City, but they kind of hinted that maybe the megacorps were the reason for that. Like they were pushing legislation to make meat illegal so that they could sell fake meat. And the other thing that we noticed was, or that they told us about, was that the NPCs actually have like their own schedules and their own lives. So while we were doing this like story mission, there was a cutscene with one of the NPCs who had actually randomly decided to go buy pizza, I guess, and he was holding like 6 boxes of pizza. And then later on you see him and he just like sets the pizza down and started eating it. So they said that they're kind of have like their own schedules and they'll just kind of randomly do other things, which is pretty cool. So the next thing that we're going to talk about are gangs in Night City. And as I mentioned earlier, the focus of the demo were the Voodoo Boys. And the Voodoo Boys were this kind of Haitian gang. They all spoke Haitian Creole, which is basically kind of like a form of French almost. But they also had some characters who spoke English. One of the really cool things is like an auto-translating body modification that you probably have by default. Maybe, I'm not sure. And I'll talk about that a little bit later when we get into some of the items that are in the game. And they said that this gang kind of has like a really good reputation with the citizens of Pacifica. So there was one point where they were kind of running a butcher shop which is illegal because meat is illegal in Night City. And they were taking that meat and handing it out to people who are just regular citizens who weren't a part of the gang. So they're just like, you know, developing this really good relationship with the people and the citizens who live in their town. The other big gang that we saw in the demo were the animals. And the animals are these like super, almost like grotesquely huge muscled people who abuse this steroid, which is called juice. And they're like super into bodybuilding and like wrestling and that kind of stuff. And they just look kind of disgusting. But they also had like a lot of body modifications. And so their kind of thing is that they're super strong, but they also had some like speed enhancing cyberware. So one of the guys that you're fighting, he actually like teleports or like dashes really quick, and it's almost this kind of like tracer thing where they're just like super fast. The other gangs that they mentioned were the Maelstrom and Scavenger gangs, but we didn't see very much of them or any of them at all in this demo. So the next thing we're going to talk about are some of the more RPG elements. RPG obviously standing for role-playing game. They specifically mentioned at the beginning of the demo that a lot of people had said they felt the first demo that we saw last year was too focused on just the combat and not enough of the focus was on the RPG side of it. And they said this game is very much an RPG, so we're going to show more of that in this demo. They did show off the skill tree, and I think there were maybe about 12 to 15 different categories. They were mostly focused around like blades, rifles, handguns, hacking, assassination, which I'm assuming is kind of like stealth stuff. They had melee, engineering, and I think that was all I was able to write down in the short amount of time that they showed the screen. But whether or not that has like branching paths in terms of different skills that you can equip after that, I'm not exactly sure. There were also skill-locked dialogue options, which are separate from the background dialogue options that I mentioned earlier. And they showed how the skill points that you choose can directly affect your gameplay. So for example, if you have a very strong character, you can essentially just rip open doors with your hands, and there was a turret which you just can tear apart. But if you have a more intelligent character, you can hack the doors to open them, or you can hack the turret AI to attack other people instead of you. One other thing that they mentioned, which I found interesting, was that you could play the entire game non-lethally if you decided to. So while we were playing this story mission, you could sneak up behind someone, put them in a chokehold, and then from there either choose to break their neck or just choke them out and then leave them on the ground. Another thing they showcased in the demo was the ability to choose different approaches for your mission. So you have your main mission, there are secondary objectives like any other game would have, and you get to choose kind of how you want to do it. So you're not forced into, we have to go to this point and you have to hit this checkpoint in order to proceed, but rather the NPCs will say, look, there's a door here, you can go this way. And you can choose to take their advice and go that way, or you can choose to approach it from a different path. The other thing they said is that you can choose if you want to go in guns blazing or stealth, and it's all up to you. You get to decide, which obviously is what you would expect in an RPG. The other thing they showed us is that you can earn reputation points per region. So each district will have its own reputation, and if your rep is high enough, some of the vendors will show you items which they might not show you otherwise because they like you and they trust you, so they want to sell you some better gear. Alright, so now let's talk about some of the abilities and kind of miscellaneous gameplay things. The first, as I mentioned earlier, is that your character has an auto-translating body modification. So I don't know if that's something that you by default have. I kind of assumed that it would be, but basically the way that it looked was that an NPC would be on your screen, and as they talked, the subtitle would appear above their head. And this was kind of for more of the background characters and people that you weren't directly speaking with. But it would show the dialogue in their native language, and then it would kind of glitch and flip into English. So that was actually really cool because all of the NPCs in the background are able to talk in their native language without it just being a bunch of people yelling in English, despite their diverse backgrounds. The other thing, which I'm pretty sure people already knew, is that you can switch between first and third person driving, and they said this is a cool way to also be able to look at your character, and of course they wanted to do that because a lot of people prefer driving in third person. A minor note is that when he was riding on one of the motorcycles, it did look like it played really well. It looked like it was pretty easy to drive, and it looked, this is a weird thing to say maybe, but I'm assuming that you guys know what this means and how this feels, is when you're driving a car in a video game and it feels like it really has weight to it. And that's the way that it looked to me, but obviously that's something that you would need to actually play the game to know how it felt. This is a really minor thing, but I thought it was interesting and it looked cool because when there was a panel that we needed to hack, it was on the wall behind like a bookshelf kind of that was just littered with cardboard boxes. And there was an action that your character could take that said clear shelf, and you could actually like push the boxes aside to get access to this panel. And it's, again, a really minor detail, but it looked cool. Hacking is obviously a really big thing in the cyberpunk world, and so there are a few things that we can talk about with the hacking. First of all, of course, there's a hacking minigame. And I'm pretty sure that he said that there were multiple different kinds of hacking minigames, but we only saw one at the demo. The other thing is that the hacking minigame itself had a main objective, which was to like unlock a door or shut down a camera, but there were some bonus objectives that you could complete as well if you were really good at the minigames, which I think is kind of cool because it feels like minigames are kind of a throwaway thing in a lot of games usually, where it's just like point A, point B, you get this like achievement. But this felt more like point A, point B, and then if you get C and D, then we'll give you extra things. The other thing that you can do is buy and upload viruses to things like cameras and doors in order to shut them off or open the doors. Another thing you can do is hack a bench press, and we actually did that in the mission where one of the animals was lifting some weights. We hacked the bench press, and it actually, the barbell came down and crushed the guy because he wasn't able to pick it back up. And a fun anecdote they mentioned was that when they showed the game to Keanu, he actually said that this is like, why it's important to have a spotter. Another way to use the hacking is that if you take out one member of a gang and then you hack that person, everyone else in that area is then able to be hacked. So it's like you kind of gain access to their network and then you can infiltrate them from the inside. You can also hack the enemy's cyberware, so if they have a cybernetic arm, you can get them to pull their grenade and then just hold it in their hand until they explode, killing people nearby, or they can actually just pull their gun and shoot themselves in the head. We also saw like a boss fight with one of the leaders in the animals gang, and they showed us that there are weak spots on the boss enemies, or at least there was on this one, and you had to focus that in order to get the boss to lose her superhuman speed and strength, and otherwise she's like really, really hard to kill. It seemed like it was pretty difficult. And at one point, the guy playing the game actually got knocked down, and the boss was able to start a hack into your system. And so your ally was then able to defend you and say, like, you know, I'm trying to hold her off or whatever, but it put a bar at the top of the screen that showed you like this hacking progress thing, and it would kind of go back and forth a little bit, so it wasn't just linear, you know, like 0%, 100%. It was kind of like your ally is fighting the hack, and it puts this kind of time limit on the boss fight. The other thing they showcased, which I think again is maybe something they've shown before, not sure, but again, just going over 100% of everything I saw, was that the NPCs actually have location damage. So if you shoot them in their leg, they'll limp towards you instead of just walking at you. If you shoot him, like you shot somebody in the shoulder and he was holding his shoulder like this, but he was still trying to fight. So that actually looked really cool, because then instead of them just dying instantly, they actually look like they're being, you know, damaged in a fight. The other really big thing that they mentioned was that there are no loading screens. And in my spreadsheet, I put just a bunch of question marks, because I will believe that when I see it. In a huge open world RPG game, for there not to be any loading screens will be pretty amazing. And they said that you can fast travel, which of course then would show you a loading screen, but it actually seemed pretty short. We were fast traveling to different regions, and it didn't feel like it took very long at all. They didn't focus too much on weapons in this demo, but they did show us one very particular weapon, which was called the nano wire. And your character essentially holds it like this, and it looks like a glowing thread that goes from one hand to the other, similar to the way that Hitman would hold like one of those piano wires, right, that you would use to strangle someone. But of course it's made of laser, because this is cyberpunk. And what was really cool about that was that he wasn't just using it like a garrote, but he was actually using it as kind of like this laser whip, where he would like lash out and it would cut off people's legs or heads and that kind of thing, which was pretty sick. And another thing they showed us when they were playing as the main, this combat main character, because we had like a hacking character and then like combat character, and he showed the combat boost inhaler that he would take before a fight to just basically amp them up and get them to, I think, have more damage resistance and that kind of thing. Some other kind of miscellaneous thoughts before we get into the potential story spoilers. The lighting looked really amazing. I think that's like the thing that makes a open world game really shine, is when the lighting looks incredible, and it felt very natural, which was really amazing. The NPC clothing moved really naturally. They didn't seem super stiff, which is a problem I think that a lot of open world RPG games have, or just games in general. You know, it's small details like that that make a game look really amazing, is when it feels natural. The other thing is that the NPCs in the background didn't feel like they were kind of copy-pasted, which is a lot of, I mean, every Assassin's Creed game has like the same 7 characters just copy-pasted everywhere, right? And so I felt like I was really trying to watch it with a critical eye and see like some of the NPCs in the background have like different walking animations. Some of them I did notice they had the same walking animation, but their clothing was different, and so it kind of hid the animation a bit better, and so it made it look more like they had a unique walking animation. And there weren't characters who were just like, I don't know, moving in the same ways, and things that you notice that kind of take you out of the immersion of an open world game, right? Like there were characters in Pacifica who were like lounging on the stairs and like hanging out on railings, and just the positions that they were in felt very natural, which was cool. And I think that like helps with, like I said, the immersion of the world. Now, in the interest of fairness, I just feel like everything that I've said so far has been pretty positive, and so there were a couple things that I noticed that seemed like minor graphical problems. So in the interest of fairness, I will mention them as well. At one point, there was one of the characters whose shadow looked like it had some crazy, like, or not crazy, but it was like weird aliasing, and I noticed that as the shadow got to like your peripheral vision, it just disappeared instead of going out of your field of view. I only noticed that happen one time in the hour-long demo. And the other thing is that when we're in like this big fight, there was a bunch of debris flying everywhere, and some of the debris, when I saw it go out into the air and then just disappear. I only noticed that one time, but I'm trying to be fair and just mention everything that I saw. But what was really cool was that we had this huge fight, and there was like all this debris everywhere. There's rocks and like plants on the ground, and things are kind of destroyed. And then we left that area to go do some other things. And when we came back to that area, all of the debris was still in the same place. So all the rocks that had been broken, everything that was laying around on the ground that was scattered, had all stayed where it was. So that was also really awesome. Okay, so the last thing that we have to talk about are the things that are potentially story spoilers. This is my warning to you. Again, do not watch past this point if you are not interested in anything that could potentially be a story spoiler. And if you do, don't yell at me because I warned you like 7 times up to this point, okay? So the big thing that they mentioned, of course, because everyone's coming down off of the hype of the Keanu Reeves announcement, is that Johnny Silverhand is actually a ghost AI. And he wasn't clear if he was helping you or more just annoying you, but he was there, kind of in and out, wasn't persistently there, but he would show up and say some things and that kind of thing. The thing with that is that it wasn't really clear if he was dead or if he was like trapped in this like digital form and maybe your character's supposed to be helping him or something like that. They didn't really say anything about that. All they said was that Johnny Silverhand, which is Keanu Reeves' character, is a ghost AI. Those are the words they used. They said that because Keanu Reeves is such a nice guy, they wanted to show off his acting chops and have Johnny Silverhand be this kind of asshole, like jackass character who's just kind of mocking you, making fun of you, and you know, giving you a hard time basically when you get knocked down and that sort of thing. The other thing that I thought was cool was that at one point there's actually a dialogue option that specifically says in parentheses Johnny Silverhand, so you can talk to him directly, and instead of like having to, you know, hack or something to like communicate with this AI, you literally have a dialogue option to talk to him and ask for his advice. At the end of the demo, they showed us where essentially you're able to go into the cyberspace, and it was very kind of Matrix, like entering this world made of data kind of thing. And so they said that there's all these people who are obviously trying to achieve immortality by uploading their consciousness to the cyberspace, which is a kind of a thing that has been explored a lot, I would think, in sci-fi. You know, people want to live forever and they want to upload their brain so that they just live forever in digital form. So they called that going beyond the black wall. I don't know why they called it that, but that's what they said. And so they said that your character is basically, they put you in this like ice bath, and they're plugging you into the Matrix, and you're going into cyberspace. And they said, like, you know, they're trying to, it was like you were trying to lure someone out of cyberspace by using Johnny Silverhand as bait. And so they were like, you know, plenty of people have gone, or few have gone beyond the black wall, but no one has ever come back until her. And then there's like this crazy kind of face trying to come out of the wall in cyberspace, and that was the end of the demo. So my final impression is that this game is absolutely living up to my hype. I'm very excited about it. It looks amazing. It looks like it's just going to be a very fun game to play. The RPG elements look really verbose, and it just looks incredible. And it's really hard for me, you know, I'm not like a professional video game reviewer. I don't do this very often, but I wanted to just share with you guys as much as I could, because obviously not everyone gets invited to that thing and the kind of behind closed doors stuff, and I felt really honored that they included me in that, and I'm really happy about the relationship that I have with CDPR, because they're probably like my #1 favorite developer. And so they said that, you know, at the beginning of it, they make it very clear, no photos, no videos, no audio recording of any kind. And so in the interest of maintaining that relationship with them, I obviously didn't do any of those things, but I did take very, very detailed notes while I was watching the video. And so, as I mentioned, I'm going to put that, basically it's like a Google spreadsheet. I'm going to put that link in the description for you guys, and I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I know everyone is really looking forward to Cyberpunk. I firmly believe that it is going to be a very good game, and I hope that it is. So, yeah, thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you next time.